Ash Naylor, welcome to Australian Musician.
Thanks for having me.
It all started in high school with the band The Swarm. What were the albums that you were playing at that point?
Wow, what a great question. 85, it would have been Stone Dromios by the Hoodoo Gurus. Mars Needs Guitars by the Hoodoo Gurus. Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy by The Who. 85. Well, coming into 86, it also would have been The Queen Is Dead by the Smiths and Life's Rich Pageant by REM. And then, Rubber Soul by the Beatles and Everything by the Beatles. Yeah.
So does it naturally follow that Brad Shepherd and Johnny Marr were influences?
Totally. Absolute gods to me as a teenager, like both of those players. I was completely enamoured with Brad when I was a teenager, and a little bit starstruck when I first met them, and then later ended up playing with them. Even supported Gurus a couple of times, and in the sort of the thick of it in the 80s, the Gurus really stood out, for a lot of reasons. Musically and aesthetically, they were set apart from a lot of the synth pop that was happening at the time, and seeing Dave and Brad play Tallies and Gretches and later on Strats and that kind of thing. It was just a nice local reference point, having someone you could aspire to be like in Melbourne, just a local guitar god.
Even formed in 1994, 28 years ago. Matthew began with you in The Swarm.
He did.
And then Wally came a little bit later.
He did,
I believe. Do you remember the first time you met Wally?
I think it was in 86. The Swarm played a show down in Warrnambool with a band called the Brain Donors, which featured Link, who was a singer in what later became the Meanies. So we've kind of known each other since the mid-80s. So I think Wally put that show on at Warrnambool, and my distinct memory is that Linky had wrapped Matt's mum's car in toilet paper at the end of a long, crazy night. So the next morning, Matt attempted to drive back to Melbourne with the Toyota Corona wrapped in toilet paper, courtesy of Link, which kind of set the tone for the next 30 years. And Link ended up enlisting Matt's drumming prowess in Bag Full of Bees a couple of years ago, so it's come full circle.
And Wally, of course, is a big Carlton supporter. Or Collingwood, was that an issue?
Never an issue, because we have an unwritten rule to not talk footy. I mean, we'll talk other teams, but none of us in the Even band have ever really engaged in any mean footy talk. We have like a gentleman's agreement where it's just uncool to pester your friends with negative footy commentary. You have your own whinge groups amongst yourselves, whinging about the teams in your team supporter base. But anyway, short answer, no. We all love footy, but we don't get into negative chat.
What is it about the trio format that you enjoy?
For me, pure freedom on the guitar, because most of my favourite rock groups were based around that power trio with the lead singer out front, and like the Smiths and Led Zeppelin and REM, Cream, Jimi Hendrix Experience, crying out loud. Just having the freedom to not to be tied to a format. Even flirted with having extra members along the way, and we had my dear friend Anton Ruddick playing guitar with us in recent years. Anton from the Swedish magazines, and he's just an amazing player, so it gave me a bit of a chop out in the forward line.
28 years with Even. What are some of your fondest memories?
Probably just the live experience. I mean, the recordings for me are everything, and the legacy of the band means, I can't quantify what that means to me, like as an artist. But the fun we had on the road, and just the supports we did, like the Gurus, the Dandy Warhols, and Urge Overkill, some great supports. And local bands as well, like bands like Snout and UMI and Custard, and We did a great tour in '97 with Spiderbait Nocturnal, Indigenous rock band, and Spiderbait, and we were on the same bill, and it was like a travelling circus. But it took us to other parts of the country we hadn't seen before, and just friendships, friendships that still exist today, and yeah, I think just the live experience of being on a wave in the late '90s, particularly with National, the broadcaster Triple J, playing all our bands like us and Tomorrow People, Linky's band from the '90s, and yeah, it was just a great time, in your 20s and 30s, just laughing and drinking your way across the country.
Reverse Light Years was the last album, 2021, a double album. Mm-hmm. Where are you at with the next one?
No plans right now. Yeah, no, because the cymbals are still rocking from that record, so I have to change lanes and pick another lane for a while, because this sounds like a Spinal Tap, not Nigel Tufnell thing to say, but you can't follow that. When you can't, like I've made a 17-song album with Eve, and you can't follow that up right now. It's just not. It's just, how do you do it? Like that was an album that, in some ways, made itself during 2020 when we were all shut down, and I put my mind to it and really focused and really knuckled down and played what I think, and I don't say this very often or lightly, but some of the best stuff I've ever played, albeit to a hard drive. Yeah, I'm still processing the making of that record, let alone the fact that it came out and it was received so well. Like I kind of almost can't believe it. It seems like a fantasy to have your first album and that album be received so well after so long. So I sort of feel like I don't want to break the spell by trying to follow it up anytime soon.
You probably haven't played it live enough.
Not a lot, no, but we did 2 shows last summer. We played 2 nights at the Northcote Social Club, playing the album in full. And like I said, the cymbals are still rocking. My ears are still ringing. It was wonderful, but it's been filmed and recorded, so I'm not as dumb as I look. Things have been archived, yeah.
The Paul Kelly gig, how did that come about?
I think mostly through Pete Luscombe, who met Pete in the late '90s. I did a couple of fill-ins with his band, The Casuals. They did a Prince of Wales residency on, I think it was Tuesday nights back in '97, '98, and I sat in for a couple of nights, because Pete is a great fan of music and a great supporter of local music. So he would bring people like myself and Ross McLennan from Snout into the Casuals lineup and do a few songs. So I did a Funkadelic song and a Beatles song with those guys, I think. And fast forward to 2006, Pete and I had sort of been buddies over the years, and Peter had got in touch with Paul to give me a ring, because Dan Luscombe, Pete's brother, had joined the Drones. And there was a guitar vacancy in Paul's band, so Paul just rang me up and asked if I fancied coming on tour. And at that point it was a Day on the Green tour with the Pretenders and the Church. And I said, yep, that'd be great. And we had a cup of tea, played a few songs around the kitchen table, and here we are, 2023, yeah. So Pete Luscombe was the facilitator in that transaction. Yeah. But it was a beautiful thing, a beautiful experience to put my foot into another world, because those guys are sort of like the next generation up from me. To sort of take a big leap into the into that world was daunting but thrilling.
I gather Pete had something to do with you joining the RocKwiz band as well.
He did, yeah. I think I'd done a couple of little spots with them. I can't really recall. 2009 I went on as a guest under my own name, and that was fun. And then sort of a year later, they were doing a tour, and I was drafted in to sort of give James Black a bit of a chop out in the forward line, as we like to say, so he could play a bit more guitar, a bit more keys, and I was sort of doing some bits that he couldn't reach, and sort of became part of the RocKwiz family, and that's been going till now. We just did a tour for the Mushroom 50th celebration concert, so yeah, I mean, I'm just a lucky guy, really. Like, just, you know, have met some really great people, and when they invite you into a world, if you've got hopefully enough foresight to sort of realise what you're jumping into, just be prepared and do the work. And Pete and Paul particularly, and Bill from that band, and everyone who plays in that band, Cameron and Vic and Linda and Dan Kelly, you just got to do the work, you know. Come into rehearsal with knowing the songs, and it's taught me a lot about preparation, because Pete, for example, he'll warm up half an hour before a show in another dressing room with headphones on a drum pad, warming up, you know. And the best shows that I've played in recent years are where I've actually done a bit of a warm-up just to calm the nerves and settle in.
The other great Australian band you're playing is The Church. You're about to go off to America on tour again.
Yeah.
I know Ian Hogue was a huge Church fan before he joined the band. Were you a big fan too?
Absolutely.
And how did you end up joining them?
Well, if we work backwards from Ian, because that's pretty much how I joined the band. And I was a massive fan in the 80s as well, and Peter and Marty were like gods to me as guitar players. And yeah, I was a massive fan. I was buying their records and seeing them live. I saw them in 88 and 90, in a sort of that period of Starfish and Gold Afternoon Fix. And yeah, I met Steve on a RocKwiz tour, actually. Like, I met him as a musical peer, if that's the right expression. And we hit it off, and I wouldn't pester him for church stories, but they'd sort of come out, because, you know, Steve's pretty effusive at times, and he was willing to share these stories. And fast forward to 2019, actually even did a show with Ian's band, The Predators, at the Triffid in Brisbane. It was a day-long festival, sort of guitar rock bands and power pop bands, and we'd finished our set, and I'd done some kind of, you know, crazy David Gilmour Hendrixy kind of try hard, you know, psychedelic moment. And Ian looked up, and I was sort of packing up a bit, and Ian said, "Hey, you going, man?" Because I hadn't seen Ian for a while, and he said, "You should join the church." So, okay. I think I was rolling a cable. And he said, no, I sent Steve a message during your gig. I sent Steve, this is the church's new guitar player. And up until that point, I didn't realise what was happening within the church, because I wasn't privy to that. Needless to say that Peter had officially announced his departure, and Steve and I had a chat during the week, and this is like May 2019, and here we all are sitting in a rainbow.
So how does it feel to be an Australian musician playing overseas with the church and going down so well, knowing that the Americans love that music as well?
It's a thrilling feeling, absolutely thrilling, because, you know, I'm self-aware enough to know that I'm not an original member, I'm a new member, and from the outside looking in, you're watching a band that's had multiple lineup changes. So I'm a fan and a participant at the same time, but it feels great. I mean, playing that music, it's just majestic rock music. Like, it's got so much depth to it and beauty, and to play it to an American audience is a massive thrill, and you know, one that I'm prepared to miss an AFL Grand Final for.
Hypnagogue is the latest album, which is right up your alley.
Yeah.
Was that a fulfilling album to be involved with?
It was wonderful, because going back to May 2019, by November 2019, the band had reconvened with the new lineup, which includes Jeffrey Kane from the States. He came out to Australia, so he lives in Birmingham, Alabama. He was a touring member of the church, and it's like an auxiliary member, but became a full member around that time. So it was like a Marvel comic. Everyone congregated in Gosford at Damien Gerard's studio. And it was like a stranger camp. So it was Tim Poles, Jeffrey, Ian, Steve and myself in this studio in Gosford amidst the bushfires. And it was a weird time, because, well, it was pre-pandemic, 2019. So we were jamming. We jammed for like a week. Some songs had structure, some songs didn't. And then amongst Tim, Jeffrey, Ian, who did a lot of the, and Andrew Beck, who engineered the record. Man, he did a mountain of work editing these jams into, you know, digestible size songs. And so Steve went back with Andrew and did vocals during 2020. At times when Steve, you know, could get there, and then mixed by Daryl Thorpe in LA with Jeffrey Kane. It's kind of seeing the project to its completion. It was great. We were just jamming pretty much, and some, like I said, some songs had form. So songs like Albatross and I Think I Knew and Aerodrome, they were kind of formatted. Other songs like Hypnagogue were born out of other jams, and Jeffrey, for example, put the backing track to Hypnagogue together in Birmingham, sent it back to Steve. Steve put vocals on it, and then I went back 2021, put some guitars on it. The first day of the Melbourne opened up, I hired a car and drove up to Gosford and went and did some extra guitars on what songs? Hypnagogue, Ascension, Second Bridge. I went in and just lived out a few Mick Ronson fantasies.
Speaking of Mick Ronson, Ronson's Hangup is another project you're involved with. You've got an album coming out called Centaurus.
Yeah.
It's with members of the Anyones, Dallas Crane, Courtney Barnett's band. Why did you need to add yet another project to your calendar of events?
I didn't need to. It was just by osmosis, because this thing started like in 2009, so like 14 years ago. Steve and I have been mates since for the last 25 years, and Mel Pinkerton from the Anyones, and they did an album in 2009, and I played on that, and at that point it was just a duo. It was just Mel and Steve. They did everything on the record. I didn't need to add something else in the calendar, but thankfully Ronson is so spaced out that you know, if we can slot it into the calendar, we'll attack and we'll pounce on the calendar and you know, do a show when we're all in town, because Dave Moody plays in Courtney Barnett's band and they're travelling the world a lot of the time, and the rest of us sort of sit around and wait for the bat phone to ring and see if we can slot it in. But it's also very fulfilling for me just being a guitar player, adding to pre-existing songs, because then I'm not sort of agonising over the content and whether it's worthy or not. But that said, Steve and I co-wrote a few songs on this record, which that was a first for us, and that was brought about through the 2020, 2021 lockdowns, where I had lots of time to sit around noodling. Yeah.
Waxes and Wanes is the single that's out at the moment. What is it about the Rickenbacker sound that you like?
Well, that takes me back to the Smiths and REM stuff, because, you know, and Church as well. Marty played a Ricky, and George Harrison and John Lennon. And I was sort of fixated with Rickenbackers in the mid-'80s, because I grew up on 70s rock with Kiss and ABBA and The Sweet, and having a sort of counterpoint to that in the 80s, when I was sort of putting a foot in the Paisley world, you know, just hearing different style of guitar playing like Peter Buck would do in the REM, and Johnny Marr, more jangly, overused word jangly, but more melodic runs, less wailing solos of it. Yeah, I was probably more drawn to something that was a bit of a counterpoint to mainstream rock at that point, and so the Ricky gets a bit of a go from time to time, and that record, I used the Rickenbacker on that track, so I thought it's only fair that I mime it with the right guitar.
The other thing that's happening for you is a new solo album, Soundtracks Volume 2. You released Soundtracks Volume 1 in 2020. How fussy are you with your guitar takes?
Not overly fussy if the spirit is there. But what I try and do, even now, is try and get a performance. Like, I'm willing to accept something that's not technically brilliant if the feel is good. Like, I've got to say, in all honesty, the lead breaks, or whatever you call them these days, on this record, the Soundtracks record, they're pretty much unadulterated. Obviously when they're mixed, levels are raised and lowered and effects are added to them, but in general, a lot of the main concept of these soundtrack records is to capture a performance, and that's not to everyone's taste. So, like, a lot of people haven't got the time to sit around listening to a 9-minute jam. But I'm not overly fussy. I mean, I'm pedantic when it comes to a part, but when it comes to soloing over it, it's a different experience, yeah.
You're holding a Les Paul. There's
I
a
am.
track called Les Paul Waltz.
There is, yeah.
A tribute to the sound or the man?
Both, yeah. I was going to name the song after a person who's near and dear to me, my long-suffering life partner, but I kind of got voted off the island when I told her I wanted to name it after her. So, in homage to Jessica by the Allman Brothers, I wanted to have a song, a piece of music that had a name attached to it. But the next step was okay, well, I'll name it after Les Paul. I'm trying to say Les these days because his name was Lester Polson. So in Australia we say Les. So anyway, Les Paul Waltz. Yeah, it's a tribute to just the whole concept of having a Les Paul. I did it on my Sunburst one, which is in a cupboard in Richmond. But you know, if you know a little bit about his story and what he means to the world of recorded music, it was only fitting that I would pay homage at some point. Yeah.
You may as well tell me about this guitar that you have. Where did you acquire it?
Well, I had to sell a vital organ to get this guitar. Got it in Melbourne, yeah. After 6 months of solid touring, I had a very, very tough life choice to make. Get a new car or a new guitar. Yeah. Got it down at Manny's. Are we allowed to say Manny's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you use many guitars on this album?
The Sunburst Les Paul Traditional, 2013. One of my secret weapons on the Soundtracks record and the Reverse Light Years was a Squire Strat, which I got at Salvo's in Abbotsford for $125. And it had some new pickups put in it, and it plays like a dream. I can't describe how good it feels. I leave it at home, I don't take it out. And I'll take the $100 guitar out, man. No, and it's got 9s on it. It's got really light gauge, Hendrix gauge strings, and I'd never tried them before, but Fender actually issued a packet of Jimmy gauge strings. It's like, whoa, like stuff that I didn't think I could ever do with these strings. It's like, okay, I can do this. But that said, one has to be a bit more precise because you can overbend, and because it can be a slippery ride, you know. So the Squire Strat, like an Indonesian Squire Strat from Salvo's, 2013 Les Paul Traditional. And my tally, I used from time to time my Mexican tally. So, yeah, I've just thought I'll invest in something like this for future shows with the. I'm not going to use the word solo project because it's not solo. It's just records under my name. So it's not like this project. It's just that's what I'm doing. You know, it's without sounding dismissive, it's kind of my focus right now. It's pretty cliched, but that's where my head is at. I feel like I can get more across this way than I can this way. But you know, there's songs brewing as well. But for the time being, the guitar is the vehicle for getting the ideas across. Yeah.
So this is an album you want to take out on the road?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we did a off-Broadway show this year at Shot Kickers in Thornbury, and we'll do more off-Broadway shows. All my shows are off-Broadway. I'm launching the album in November down in the Brunswick Ballroom, which is a great room. And yeah, look, look, in my mind, this is a festival band. I mean, we could play at a cafe or we could play at a festival, because instrumental music it can be background music or it can just be completely an assault on the senses, and I want it to be all of those things. And the other thing for me, instrumental music provides listeners with an option to create their own world. Whereas songs, as much as I love songs and I'm addicted to songs, it draws you in with the content, the dialogue and the sentiment. Sometimes you're immediately drawn in by that. Well, at the moment I'm liking having music that's just music. It's the vocals aren't sort of taking you out of the world of what's happening musically.
What are some instrumental albums that you really love?
I guess it's more instrumental songs, instrumental pieces that I've fixated on. Jessica by the Allman Brothers Band. Like during lockdown I was just really going deep on that. Well, yeah, a lot of the Zepp stuff, Bron Ra, I think that's how you pronounce it. When Pagey would just do an instrumental track. Wedding Cake Island by Midnight Oil. I love oil stuff, but I just love these standalone pieces of music that they're just so evocative. Classical Gas, Mason Williams. Like, I know it's got a bit of it has a little bit of a cheese attached to it, or some sort of social, sort of like a pop culture quirkiness to it. But if you listen to that track on its own, just nylon string guitar and an orchestra and a flat out band, it's just astonishing. And obviously the Hendrix stuff that it's long passages without vocals, and like some of the Frampton stuff as well, where there's just long sections with no singing. I mean, also the Ogden's Nut Gone Flake, Small Faces instrumental. That's an amazing piece of music. Yeah, so I guess it's not albums per se, but it's more selected pieces of music. Having said that, Dom Mariani's records, Majestic Kelp, Dom from the Stems. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those records, but he made 2 records under the name Majestic Kelp, and I would strongly encourage any of your readership, viewership to check him out, because Dom is, in my opinion, one of the great Australian guitarists. If he's a world standard guitarist. Like, I play in the Stems with Dom as well, and I'm kind of like Malcolm to his Angus, and he's astonishing. So so the Majestic Kelp albums in recent times have been the main inspiration, to be honest.
You mentioned Bronio before, the Zeppelin song. The track on the album, South Fremantle, it's got a bit of a slide acoustic.
Yeah.
What guitar were you using?
Well, I just mentioned Dom Mariani. That's an amazing coincidence, because it was Dom's Maton, and it was tuned down half a step, I think, sort of in Jimi Hendrix tuning. And I just picked it up one day. I was staying at Dom's house, and in the room that I was staying had this beautiful resonance to it, and I just started playing this lick, and I thought, oh man, I've got to record this. Because and in fact, the track was called Dom's Guitar, but I thought it might just be a bit too too referential, or giving too much info away. I didn't, being indiscreet, I thought I'll just give it a bit more of a general geographical name, hence the name South Fremantle, around the area Dom lives in. Yeah, so that was a Maton that Dom has, and it's tuned down, and it's just one of those ones where you play and the riffs just fall out, and so you've got to record them as soon as you can. So I just recorded on the phone.
When you're recording, do you prefer new strings, or do you like them worn in a bit?
Great question. I reckon just a little bit worn in. But I read this Robbie Krieger thing once where he said he likes his strings to be dead as anything. I found it really fascinating. But I like them to have a bit of zing, But I'm not a very high-tech person. I'll just sort of get a feel for if they're fresh, I'll just give them a, oh yeah, they sound okay. Like I don't have any scientific approach to how many gigs I've played or how many hours I've spent before they're due for a change. Yeah.
There's a Strat sitting there in front of us.
Yeah.
Looks like it's done a few yards.
There's a Strat winding back, yeah. Okay, this has got a story to it, this guitar, and I'm part of the story, but all right, this is a 74 Strat that used to belong to a band leader called Jimmy Johnson. I was in a wedding band in the late 80s, and yeah, I did a show in 2019 with the band ARC. We did a Beatles Abbey Road tribute thing, and Jimmy was at the show, and I asked him how the Strat was going, because I hadn't seen it for, well, since about 1990, I think, maybe. And he said, oh, I've still got it, Ash. And Jim's wife said, "Oh, you should sell it to him, Jim." I said, "Would you?" And I thought, man, I don't. How much would a 70 Strat cost? But I later heard that 70 Strats don't have a great rep. But I thought, look, he just, he offered to sell it to me. I thought, I can't pass this up, you know. So I've used it. I used it a bit in the last, 4 years. It's So it was in a wedding. It was part of a band I was in the late '80s, like a wedding/reception band, and now it's part of my, guitar arsenal. Is that a word? Should be. So there you go.
So with all that you've done, what are you most proud of in your music career?
Wow. I guess I'm proud of the fact that I'm still able to do what I love, if that's an answer. Because I think to be able to do something that you love and to be able to make ends meet through that is, it's just mind-blowing, really. Yeah, I mean, I don't sort of revisit a lot of my stuff that I've done. I don't sit there with a cup of tea with my feet up and go, gee, that was a great solo. Or there's things that I prefer above other things, but I think the fact that I have this opportunity to continue to do it is what I'm most proud of. And been very fortunate to have met a lot of great people who've encouraged me. Like my brother Justin, for example, has always encouraged me from day one, just encouraging me, supporting me, helping me do like the business side of things, and all the bandmates that I've shared time with over the years in Swarm, Even, Paul Kelly, RocKwiz Church, Ronson Hangup, Grapes, Sherry from the Grapes. I'm just proud of the fact that I've met good people who've encouraged me to keep doing what I do and given me enough support and encouragement to keep doing it. And I'm just trying to get better. I'm still trying to learn how to play this friggin' thing.
You're off to America with the church. What else is coming up between now and the end of the year?
Okay, so I've got I don't like the word launch, but it's actually appropriate for this solo record, which is not a solo record. For this soundtracks record, there'll be a lift-off party at the Brunswick Ballroom, November 17. I'll play some selections off that and some off the first instrumental record, and some songs as well. Chuck a few songs in that I like at that point in time. It could be a Prince song or a Bowie song or something. So, and then that's about it for me until Jan or Feb. Yeah, so.
No even Christmas show?
Not on the calendar, no. Like I said, man, the cymbals are still rocking from last year, so I think it's okay to not do things under obligation, and I think it's like I said, change lanes for the time being, so I'll just see what happens. Yeah.
Well, Ashley Naylor, it's been great to chat. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful. Thank you.